resonators to rhymes that resonate. Thank you all for joining the show. If you're new to the channel and enjoy conversations shaped by music and driven by meaning, please like and subscribe, smash the notification bell, and be the first to know when another dope ass conversation is posted. Today, I have with me one of my good friends, a reserve contemporary, a leader in the community, a teacher, coach, family man, my guy, Theophilus Harp. Thank you for joining me.
I appreciate you, my brother. It feels good to be here, man. I appreciate you open up this space for me, man. Just to spend some time with you, man. Have a few conversations and just get down to the nitty and the gritty, man, of what life is like
Mhm.
and what all we've been through as brothers on the battlefield, man.
Yeah, man. And I appreciate it. We kind of talked to it off camera about like when met each other at the Drill Sergeant Academy. Excuse me, hold on, let me do that right. The United States Army Drill Sergeant Academy.
He said it.
That's right. And and while there, I think we were talking about it. I was transitioning out of the Vanguard platoon into the second platoon senior spot when you were coming into the Vanguard platoon. So we had a little bit of connectivity, just kind of in passing. But I
Yeah,
went on to work with the second platoon for a cycle before being pulled as the chief of training. And you were in the Vanguard for a few cycles before taking over as a senior yourself. Can you tell me a little bit about your journey to the academy and through the academy as a drill sergeant?
yeah, man. So man, when I came through the academy, man, just seeing the way the drill sergeant leaders carried themselves, the way they were uh, pushed for excellence. You know what I'm saying? Like nobody's perfect, but seeing how they pushed themselves to be excellent at their craft, that's what I kind of wanted to be as I got went through the schooling. I graduated commandant's list, marched the graduating class, so I already had a major impact at the academy level just through my time there as a student, and then
Mhm.
moving on to the trail. And if you talk to any drill sergeant, theory is one thing, and then execution as a drill sergeant is a total different aspect, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So when I got to the trail, I brought a lot of that perfection to the trail. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? Like I'm pitching verbatim. I'm doing PRT modules the same way, it was executed at the academy.
Mhm.
And the people around you, man, if they don't want to be held to that same standard, they're going to try to knock you away from that particular standard. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? They're like, yo, what are you doing? Like, that's not how we do it here. We want to do it this way.
Mhm.
Why are you doing all the extra? You ain't got to do it that way. Let's do it this way.
Mhm.
So, I did a little over a year on the trail. And during my tenure there, man, it was really rough.
Mhm.
I went through some biased things that took place while I was there. Um, a little bit of racism took place while I was there.
Mhm.
And that's what gave me that final push to say, you know what, maybe I need to go to the academy. That way, what I want to implement and what I want to do will actually be implemented and actually be considered versus being kicked against because of culture, where I currently was.
Mhm.
Went up to the academy, interviewed, did the whole process. I got accepted, in which uh, Vanguard brought me on
Mhm.
into fifth platoon, in which at the time was Senior Drill Sergeant Leader Marshall.
Mhm.
He was a great mentor during that time, in which held me to a set standard on the Command Sergeant Major Hill. That was a great time of my career, man. As I continually to do a couple cycles,
Mhm.
a couple first sergeants, new first sergeants came in, saw my potential, man. brought me on as a deputy, and then eventually worked my way up to being a senior drill sergeant by the time I was getting ready to leave there. And
Yeah.
we went through a lot of little different things while we were there. The COVID era was something crazy. As you already know, I'll let you kind of add your input on that part, but that's pretty much kind of how my drill sergeant tenure went.
Hmm.
Before I made the decision due to family time
Hmm.
to transition into the Army Reserves.
Oh man, so much there, right? Definitely want to touch on the transition, because for somebody who was fast tracking, um, in active duty, like you were, uh, that's something that I think folks need to really get a insight into, or it would be beneficial to, right? But um, it's the year 2025, not 1975, not 1965, not 1775, right? Um,
Right,
but you mentioned that you experienced racism in the military, and I think when you look around, not I don't think, I say I think is a crutch word, right? When I look
right,
around into the current climate, um, there are very specific things related to race, and the military, that are currently, raising questions and concerns throughout our
absolutely.
formations. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, especially coming from your experience and as a past experience, but now even as a reserve soldier, executing in the civilian world. What do you see and what do you think about these things?
Man, from a racism or biased standpoint, it's natural because someone like myself, who is an African American, you're the minority. You're
Hmm.
still the minority naturally. Um, we're only 12% of the population in America. So, you naturally, racism still exists. We
Hmm.
still have people from like my parents' era, the 1950s, the 1960s, who are still around. My grandparents worked on farms. They were sharecroppers. My dad was a sharecropper all the way up until everything was kind of modernized, and then he transitioned over to being a pastor.
Hmm.
So, we're still descendants of what took place years ago. So it's not really that far removed, even though people may think so.
Hmm.
And depending on who's in position and who's in power, leadership is about influence.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And depending on who's in your formation, that takes place from day to day. That's what we're kind of seeing right now
Hmm.
with all of the policy changes. It's just influence. It's just
Hmm.
who's in the seat, who's the current leaders. You know what I'm saying? And this is across the board, whether black or white. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter.
Hmm.
It's all about who's in the seat and the culture that was set at that time, especially when you're talking about, just naturally, I feel that a lot of our combat arms during my earlier years in the military sway towards our Caucasians or, other races versus my race. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? You're kind of outnumbered. Not as many black personnel in that field, when which a lot of personnel when you go to the trail are a lot of combat arms.
Hmm.
You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? You do get those support personnel, but they see you as support. They don't see you as the same level. That's which where that discrimination factor comes in. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? That discrimination plays a part. Even just MOS to MOS,
Yeah.
combat
Hmm.
arms, support personnel. I feel that was some of what I was dealing with when I was on the trail.
Hmm.
You know, when you go through the academy, everyone's taught the same thing.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't deter, it doesn't defer at all. But when you get to the trail, people tend to put their own little touch on things, and I feel that the culture that was set there
Hmm.
was kind of against someone like myself.
Mm,
Hence is why I dealt with so much discrimination while I was there. I still performed well, but it took a lot more effort, which on my part resulted in a lot of depression,
mhm,
um, which resulted to drinking. Um, and that was for like a year straight. One of
mhm,
my homeboys, man, he came to visit and he opened the refrigerator and he was like, "Bro, there's only but drinks in here, right? Like there's no food." He's like, "What are
mm,
y'all eating?" Like, and I'm like, "I didn't notice it."
mm,
You know what I'm saying? That I didn't notice it. He had to bring it up to me. So you're like, okay, maybe I need to go, maybe I need to go talk to somebody. Or
mhm,
maybe I need to change pace, something. Hence why I decided to make the move up to the academy for a change of culture, change of pace.
man. There, like, we haven't even got to the music yet, man. And you know what, I'm okay with it because I think what you're surfacing right now is just it very. There's a lot there, right? It's very nutritious, if you would, right? Um, it's dense, and I say that because you said something that I think is really profound. You said that what you experienced was essentially natural bias, right? Um,
100%.
and I think it's you also use the term racist or racism, whatnot, and whatever. But like, I think when I think about like what you described and like some of the things that we see like influence, um, natural bias, right? Whether uh, you're talking about a majority of men, you were talking about a majority of whites, or you're talking about a majority of blacks, Hispanics, Asian, doesn't matter, right? Like,
Yep.
um, people with disabilities, there's a natural bias that occurs against the minority, right?
100%.
Um, and that natural bias isn't harmful until you realize it's harmful. And I made a post on um one of an influencer, right, who I know through like mutual folks, um who within the military, the millisphere, I don't know if that's a thing, uh but she's
I
I
like that word though.
hey man, we out here freestyling, right? But she Latoya Green, Miss Get Right or Get Left on Instagram, always
Right.
bringing up some really great points. And one of the points of contention, specifically around race, is the shaving profiles, or
Okay.
the doing away with the shaving profiles. And I'll admittedly say I haven't gotten smart on it, but through the whispers that I've picked up, for one, the majority of folks with shaving profiles are black males, right? Um,
100%.
and one of the things that is cropping up is people saying, well, learn how to shave, or it's not that hard, or whatever. And she raised that, or a video of somebody else saying something like that, just learn how to shave, because your career depends on it, you'll figure it out. And she also raised the fact that like minimizing somebody else's struggles is not what leaders are there to do.
Right.
And so my response to all that, and why I bring it up, is empathy, right? Like, that's one of my favorite words, right? A lack of empathy. This is kind of paraphrasing what I said, right? I'm paraphrasing myself. Is a lack of empathy is often confused for setting the standard and holding the standard,
Yeah.
right? And oftentimes getting to the heart of the matter is too much for somebody to do, right? Especially,
Right.
in my experience, on when folks are so used to just like giving the orders, and and maybe have very few barriers to whatever the challenge is. um like, it's real easy to say you figure it out, but that lack of empathy, it really creates chasms between you and the people you're leading. And I think
Right.
that is one of the things that I'm really kind of concerned about, when I look at what this policy or any of these policies that are kind of I don't want to say being repealed, but kind of like rescinded and rewritten and whatnot, like around female hair and all that kind of stuff. Because what it shows is a lack of empathy, right? We talk about wanting war fighters. When I say we, like Department of Defense, the military, the country says, we
Right.
want war fighters who are capable of defending our interests. Roger that. But instead of focusing on some things that may help with like quality of living or ability to go out and execute, we are getting extra stress added on us for things that are medical conditions that can't necessarily be easily changed, right?
Right.
And so instead of having empathy to that, right? Like I don't have very many bumps currently, right? I also don't shave every day. I don't know if
Right.
you can tell, right? But I don't shave every day. Um, but when I get in uniform, I do. But also, I got out of the army and I had the VA. The VA actually wrote me a permanent profile for shaving, basically
Right.
stating that like my skin condition was so bad that I should never put a razor to my face again. Um, and when I knew that I was going to be, getting back in and joining the reserves, I elected to get laser hair removal, right? And so there were 7 sessions scheduled, and it was so freaking painful. I made it through 6, and the hair still grows. I still get bumps. Like if I have to shave every day for an extended amount of time, dude, I'll still get the bumps. You know what I mean? Like
Right. Right. Right.
the bleeding bumps.
Right.
If wind blows on it, it's like a cavity. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. And
Right.
and that's for somebody who doesn't have to do this every day. And I think just again that lack of empathy for the other is really something that I see just throughout our society of like really caring about those around us. Um, and the challenges that they have because we're blind to them, right?
Right.
But it's a natural bias. And I think that's the part that's crazy is it's a natural thing to not notice what somebody else is going through if you're not actively asking yourself to do that.
Bro, it naturally, like you said, like I'm not even. It's not just a color thing.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? You see it just with music, for example, iPhones versus Samsung.
Hmm.
That's a natural bias. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? People tend to go towards what they naturally connect to.
Hmm.
Um, that's just what it is. Um, with the whole facial hair thing and all of the policies that are coming out, I feel that COVID had a lot to do with it.
Hmm.
Because the natural, we weren't showing up to work. A lot of personnel, we weren't at work every day, so you kind of relax with certain standards, if you will.
Hmm.
Which people like myself and yourself, we were in the office every single day. So no matter what, we had to kind of figure it out.
Hmm.
Um, like you said, following the medical side of things, we should cater to personnel that have medical issues. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just how it should be.
Hmm.
But now you have people kind of panicking because they don't know how they're going to maneuver around the whole shaving situation. Because granted, I have curly hair on my face
Hmm.
uh, naturally, so I don't shave all the way down. I actually don't use a razor on my face. I use clippers,
Hmm.
kind of like hair clippers. And I cut it all the way down to where there's hair still sticking out.
Hmm.
And I have a profile as well. But I just have to keep it cut every single day to make sure that it stays as low as possible. That way it doesn't draw any attention. And
Hmm.
I think that's what it pretty much boils down to. A lot of people during the last couple years were taking it for granted. Some people took it for granted on
Hmm.
the relaxed standards, if you will, with hence why these policies just came out. Whether I agree with it or not, I did notice a major change on how many people were walking around with just full force beards. And I'm
Yeah.
talking full force, not the eighth of an inch, making sure you shave it all the way down. I'm
Hmm.
talking full force, like as if they were reservists,
Hmm.
on their regular duty. Hence why I believe these changes are now implemented, which can now create problems for personnel that actually have medical conditions.
I'll take a step back and say, while I agree with most of what you said, um, I don't want to get hyper focused on just the shaving, right? Because I also want to say back to the fact that like we talk about wanting war fighters,
Mm,
how low my
agreed.
face hair is matters less than am I physically fit, right?
Fit.
Am I mentally fit, right? Like,
Yes.
is my
Nah, nah,
family
for real.
going to be taken care of when I'm deployed, right? And those are
Right, right,
questions that I think have gotten less scrutiny, less policy support, and
right,
all those things. And so when I think about like what's important, what are we really telling? And that's why I think that, when we start thinking about that bias and, when people feel like personally attacked and challenged about these things, um, I think that's where it stems from is like when you can, like, again, when you talk about something natural, when you see somebody, you get pulled over for going 5 miles an hour and the cop is talking to you and then somebody blazes by and at 100 miles over the speed limit, right?
yeah.
You're like,
Nah,
but
I
what
get
about this? You worried
that.
about me? You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that's where it really comes from is like, it's like this is what we're choosing to focus on.
Nah, I
And
get
that's
that.
what begins to feel unfair, right? And not even just unfair, like, we talk about the focal points of things and it's just a matter of again where are we coming from, are we being empathetic in how we choose to go about this, and I do want to make sure we get into the music, but I'm sure we'll touch on this again, especially because when you talk about how those biases interact, you mentioned something that goes right into one of the songs you mentioned as far as the way I look at it, which is the theory versus the reality, right? And
Right.
you know I actually, you know what? We'll go ahead and switch it, right? The three songs that you shared are Beat It by Michael Jackson, Yeah by Usher, and March Madness by Future. And Beat It, I think really segues or is a strong like bridge in between what we just talked about, because when I hear Beat It, I think of the bravado meeting practicality, right? I think of ego versus reality, and I also hear like this, Michael Jackson being this person looking at this young buck saying like, hey man, you're being really immature right now, this is not a problem you want, right? This is not
Right.
what you want. And but like being the other person on the other side, that young bull, being short sighted and having that Superman mentality. And I have to ask, how do you connect this song to your life growing up and even now as a leader of young men?
Man, so growing up, my pops is in his late 60s, so he's a natural Michael Jackson fan.
Mhm,
That's what it was. Um, so I love to dance, love
mhm,
it. Hence why I connected to someone like Michael Jackson. During, the 90s, he was the greatest. You know what I'm saying? Like the best to ever do it, king of pop. You
mhm,
know, um, and how it relates to my life right now, man, is at this point in my life, um, if you're not here to pour into it, if
mhm,
you're not here to add to it, and you're here to just kind of take, hey man, you got to beat it. You
mm,
know what I'm saying? Like you just got to move on out the way because I'm moving in a certain direction right now, uh, of growth,
mhm,
all growth, looking to elevate myself and continually elevate my family. And the people I want to be around right now are just positive individuals. I believe all of us have dealt with people in the past that we thought we connected with, but they showed their true colors over time, and
mhm,
maybe even from our aspect of things. I'm not gonna just put it all on them, but
mhm,
if you don't mix with somebody, hey, it's time to move on. It's time to move forward.
mhm.
That's how I kind of see how it relates to where I'm at right now.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think that's great, right? And I say that because when it kind of like started hitting me, right? I was really looking at it as like protecting my peace and preserving my energy, right?
Absolutely,
Like
bro.
I told my boss years ago, I said, yeah, I don't even run for the bus if I'm late. I don't chase nothing. Like I don't chase nothing.
That man is not moving. That man is not moving for nobody but himself, man. I
Dog,
love it.
like, cause here's the deal, right? Like, if I was late, there was a lesson to be learned in that lateness, right?
Right,
Me going after it and whatnot. Like, I'm not saying I don't try hard or try to make it or whatever, whatever. But like, sometimes you got to accept that you messed up, right?
no,
And
absolutely,
and like you said, on it could be on both sides, right? Like, if somebody is not doing the effort beforehand to get on my bus in time, right? Then you've shown what your priority is, right? And it's not
right,
me. And that's okay. Like I don't hold it against you, right? Like, but at the end of the day, this bus has to keep on moving. You know what I
right,
mean? And so like I do like that. And now that's something I wish I would have learned earlier. I'm trying to teach my kids that, right? Like if somebody's not your people, they're not your people. If they're your people today, that doesn't mean they're your people forever. And that is fine, right? But
right.
just make sure you're being 100, and not only 100 with them, but 100 with yourself, man. Um, do you try to impart any lessons like that or something different for the young men that you lead, whether in basketball or within your within the fellowship?
Yeah, man. So a lot of my coaching, a lot of my mentoring is based around uh, people putting themselves in a positive environment.
Hmm.
Um, you know, a lot of the young men um, down here play sports naturally. So you kind of have to get in that space, right?
Hmm.
To impart some of your mentorship on them. And one of the biggest lessons I try to teach them is, hey, you mentioned being late, right? So if you're gonna be late, just make sure you communicate. There's
Hmm.
nothing wrong with being late. I feel that sometimes we put too much emphasis on, oh, yo, you were late, da 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 da. Well, you don't know what took place. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Like, there's a
Hmm.
lot of factors to someone being late. You know what I mean? Like, hey, the traffic on the road. I needed to drop my daughter off. Or drop my child off. However you want to look at it. The biggest thing I try to teach people, man, is making sure you just communicate. You know what I'm saying? Hey, if I'm gonna be late, communicate it to me. Hey,
Hmm.
we're good. Hey, get here when you get here. Be safe. That's all I want. I want you to show up safe. That's the
Hmm.
biggest part. Now, don't make a habit out of it. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? But we do understand that things happen, and I learned a lot of that after becoming a leader, more so at the top.
Hmm.
You start to empathize and you start to look at things a little differently. The biggest thing for me is setting up a timeline that works for people, as a leader. That way
Hmm.
they can show up on time versus putting something, dead center of the day when people have other things going on and you're like, I don't care. I want
Hmm.
you here at 12. Like that means it's about you. It's not
Hmm.
about the people below you. So
Damn. Hmm.
I'm just saying,
Just
bro. Like, I'm just saying,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
about you. It's not about the people below you. So, you
Hmm.
got to look at it like, hey, such and such has to pick their kid up at whatever time, or
Hmm.
such and such has to be to work by whatever time. Hey, let me set up whatever event, whether it's practice or whether it's formation, from a military side of things.
Hmm.
Hey, let me set things to fit everyone, not just myself. You know.
Mm.
So that's just one of the ways I try to uh, impart some of the things that I've learned over the years
Mhm.
on the youth of today. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's you said a lot of things in there that I really really just like I connect with. Um, obviously it's more about you than it is about the others, right? When you're doing things that only work for you, that's tough. That's a bar, if you would, right?
Man, I love when you say that, bro. Like,
Yeah.
I love when you say that.
I love when I get them right because at the end of the day, man, like I have to call out when somebody drops something on me that I'm like, oh man, I could use that. And it's really impactful. And so I just appreciate when they're shared, right? But you mentioned, of course, the empathy. But you also mentioned something that I think is a bit controversial, and so I'd love to just kind of like touch on that. And when I say a bit controversial, like maybe I'm being hyperbolic, but um, accommodating, everybody, right? And that kind of goes back to the whole thing with the shaving, right? Like there is a balance, and you being a CSM currently, right?
Right.
Being a command sergeant major of a drill sergeant battalion, right? All about standards. You would know that accommodating everybody is not, or you know what? I'm going to say it. You tell me how you feel about it. Accommodating
Okay.
everybody isn't necessarily the goal. Accommodating the mission, right? But understanding that people make the mission happen is the goal, right? Like
Absolutely.
I got to create a space for my people to show up and show up well, right? There's a
Bar.
hey,
Bro.
every now and then I may drop one too, all right? Like
No bar, dog. Like, yeah.
I mean, because look, at the end of the day, man, like like I think about there's a couple soldiers I have in mind that you know I would set something and it works for everybody. Shakes their head, and even thinking about like the whole thing with COVID and putting that together at the academy. Not everybody's going to vocalize their actual concerns or their actual challenges in the moment, right? And so
Right.
you still have to say, hey, look, I set this thing that seemed to work for everybody, right? But yet it doesn't work for you, and you still have to ask the question, right? Like I think, right? Like not everybody, some people just be like, hey, we agreed on the standard and you didn't make it. And like I said earlier, I believe that a lack of empathy often is confused with setting the standard, right? But
Right.
if you are taking in those not accommodations, but those if you're taking into account those different challenges and barriers beforehand, you create something that should work. And if it
Right.
doesn't work, you can still ask those questions. It doesn't automatically make somebody a failure, nor does it make you a failure.
Right.
But it's too easy to emotionally, I think, just go there.
Right. Nah,
Hey,
100%.
you messed up, the end. I messed up, the end, right?
Right.
Um, but I'm glad that you're taking your platform not only as a leader of young men who are going to be taking these things from you and pouring them into their communities, their children's one day, but also like into the military, which this is I think an opportunity to talk about your transition from active duty to reserve, because for me, I've been active duty, reserve, active duty, and then back to reserve. And one thing that I've noticed over the years is there are far more folks on active duty who do not take into account factors of a person and just expect you to execute the end, right? Regardless if whatever the situation was. I've heard people talk to people mad crazy, right? Like I would
Man.
never, you know what I mean? Hey, don't you come around here, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
and as a reserve soldier, I've had other reserve soldiers observe that, and we'd be like, "Yo, is this how they really get down?" Not to create a dissension or anything like that, but just what are your thoughts on the difference between the way active duty leaders approach the people aspect of things versus the reserve, leaders approaching the people side of things?
So when I first transitioned from active to reserves, um and one of the biggest reasons was COVID.
Hmm.
You know, I realized, imagine needing to be home for your child
Hmm.
because they're in school from home,
Hmm.
but you still have to be at work. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Hmm.
how does that work? Like, how do you even make that happen? If I was a single parent
Hmm.
with no support system, who wants to send, regardless of family care plan, right? We
Hmm.
understand family care plan. My family care plan, if I was a single parent, would have been sending my daughter uh home to Florida to live with my mom or my
Mhm.
dad,
Mhm.
that's 400 plus miles away from where we were. We were in South Carolina.
Mhm.
Who wants that? You know
Mhm.
what I'm saying? No, nobody necessarily wants that. So that's what drove me into making the decision. You know what? It's trying to transition. I have my degrees. I have
Mhm.
enough to make a living for myself and also create a lifestyle that fits myself and my family. So that's
Mhm.
where the transition came in. Uh, what led up to it, I deployed in 2017 for a
Mhm.
full year. I was in Afghanistan
Mhm.
the whole time, minus a few days here or there spent in Kuwait and Qatar. You come back, I was individually deployed, so I
Mm.
pretty much PCS'd over there.
Mhm.
PCS over there, come back. I moved to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, to be a drill sergeant.
Mhm.
You spend 3.5 years of being a drill sergeant, not just two like normal, three and a
Mhm.
half. So you do your year as a regular drill sergeant, went up to the academy, which tacked on the extra 2.5 years.
Mhm.
So now, even though I'm at the academy, you're still waking up 2 o'clock in the morning, because we got to be to work by 3
Mhm.
to step off at 4 for
Mhm.
whatever event we might be doing. And you
Mhm.
don't get off until maybe 6 o'clock.
Mhm.
So that's really no family time. You know what I'm saying? So that was what drove the decision to go to the reserve side.
Mhm.
Get to the reserve side, everyone's a little bit more relaxed. And it took me a couple months to understand, okay, what's going on over here?
Mhm.
What's the leadership style? So I had to get a mentor on the reserve side to
Mhm.
understand the ins and the outs.
Mhm.
And the reason why was because I asked a service member to report in, and the first question they asked was, "Well, if I'm reporting in, will I be getting paid for it?"
Mm.
That's a big one, right?
That's
So I'm
that's
like,
the question for
and I'm
99%
like,
of reservists. Yeah, that's the question.
I'm like, well, at the time I didn't know how to respond. I'm active duty.
Mhm.
That's not a thing. We say, hey, report in. I
Mhm.
need you here at this time. You just execute because
Mhm.
the paycheck is gonna hit first and 15, point blank.
Mhm.
Period. Reserve side, outside of normal drill weekends or orders,
Mhm.
if someone reports in, you have to compensate them for their time.
Mhm.
That's when my leadership style changed.
Mm.
That moment taught me a lot about how to maneuver as a reserve service member.
Mhm.
And the reason why is because you might have a service member. Let's just say someone's just a normal sergeant, staff, sergeant first class, whatever. But on the civilian side, they're a doctor, they're a
Mhm.
nurse,
Mhm.
they're a paramedic. You know what I'm saying? So they're doing their day to day job that really feeds their family and their lifestyle. And you have to have some empathy when it comes down to what they do on a day to day and work around their schedule. So that's where that scheduling piece comes into play.
Mhm. I wanna go further on that. I want you to tell me more, but I also wanna just flip for those who, who are tuning in or who will tune in to your example about like those who are doctors or dentists or whoever getting paid a lot of money, and you kind of have to be mindful that like you're taking them away from that thing that feeds their family. The majority of our formation, because while that's true, the majority of our formation is E4, specialists and below, who aren't getting a lot
Absolutely.
of money, who don't
Right.
have really great paying jobs, and who aren't getting paid salary or commission. They're getting paid hourly, and
Right.
if you have them come in for 4 hours, they're getting a fraction of not only their military paycheck, they're getting a fraction of their civilian paycheck, and they're not
Right.
getting reimbursed for gas or their time or any of that, right? So it's
Right.
a really, really big strain to have reserve soldiers execute outside of scheduled and known duty hours.
Absolutely, brother. Like you couldn't have said it any better, man. Because I've had service members to just flip the script. You know, someone asking you if they're going to be properly compensated.
Hmm.
That could be their only stream of income as well.
Hmm.
You know, I've had service members that lost their job; they were laid off. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? I had service members that were potentially almost homeless, and you're like, okay, let me figure out a way to get you paid. You know what I'm saying? Come in, do some duty.
Hmm.
We need this executed. We need that executed. Hey, let me get you on some orders. You
Hmm.
know, let me get you on what we call, active duty orders,
Hmm.
ADOS. You
Hmm.
know what I'm saying? So that changed my whole mindset because now I got two sides to this thing. You got one side where people are, if you take them away from their day job, they're losing money. But
Hmm.
if you got there's another side, just like you mentioned, if you bring this person in, this could be helping them, get a decent paycheck for the month. So
Hmm.
there's definitely two sides to both to the story.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think I'll just share from my perspective. Like once you have that realization that, like, for one, one of the, I think, the banes of my leadership experiences, um you've been in a leadership position in the reserve since you joined the reserve, damn near. So that's about 3 years now, 4 years, 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah, 3 years.
Um, is you've probably done a lot of unpaid work for the army.
Oh my
Um, yeah, and I have
god.
too, right? And many leaders have. And I think the thing that really, what I hate, right, that natural bias, which is when you talk about from this echelon of leadership in the reserve, is you know I am expected almost to do work without pay. Therefore, I'm going to expect my soldiers to do the same. Um,
Right.
and that's just a
And
no go.
yeah,
That's a now take that, flip that, and then go back on active duty, right? And
right.
that's where I was. I went to the TPU, and I did, man. When I was a TPU, I came into the TPU as a which is typical reserve, 2 weekends a month, or what is it, 2 weeks a year, 1 week in a month, right? Which is not true, but whatever. When I when I first joined the reserve, I was showing up to work on active duty time, right? So like I would show up and there would be nobody there, and I'm like, who do I need to talk to get this done? What? And it wasn't a waste of time, but it was a learning curve.
Right.
And eventually I settled into the reserve routine, but never quite became, I think, that full reserve soldier type deal. And then I went back on ADOS, or so active duty, and then I went AGR, which is full time active duty for extended amount of time. And when I started realizing that, like, leaders in active duty didn't have that experience of saying, like, this is what I've done since I was 17 or 19. This is the environment I've been in since I was 17, 18, 19 years old. This is all I know. This is how I know how to talk to people. Like, I noticed there's a huge gap in communication and life experience. Like, I
Yeah.
get it. You may have been, some amazing warfighter who pulled people out of burning trucks and, like all that kind of stuff. Like, and I don't discredit that at all. Right.
Nah,
Like,
absolutely.
we need that, absolutely, but you're not always in a burning truck.
Right.
you know, the
They're
bullets aren't always flying.
flying. Right. Right.
And so you have to know how to lead those people outside of those situations. And oftentimes, that tool bag, I noticed, was very limited compared to, like, reserve soldiers who understood, like, if I was in the civilian world talking to you like this, I'd be at HR tomorrow,
Tomorrow.
and
Yep.
my little cardboard box would be filled up by the end of the day. You know,
Yep.
and that's not like a good or bad or whatever, and it's more so just a difference, right? And
Culture,
recognizing
man.
that it's a different culture, and I think
That's culture.
it's been helpful for me to take that in, and but I'll also say, coming back and, like, really leaning on that in the reserve, having that culture, especially in the work I'm in now, where it's like very empathetic and very democratic. And even at the academy, when we had all these things going on, COVID, 1059, ACFT, are we doing the new RM, blah blah blah, like, and people came to me like, hey, so what are we doing? I wasn't very much of a you're gonna do this. Like that never felt right to me. It was always more so like, I don't know, how do you think the best way of going about this would be? And I
Being
found out
inclusive,
being inclusive, right? And it
being
sounds
inclusive.
good, but it also created a lot of frustration when people just needed to know when and where to go.
Exactly. Right.
And so, like, I'm still learning that balance of leadership, I think. And, I'm going to approach it the same way I approach, other things, which is I'm going to keep testing it and trying to figure it out because the soldiers, the people who are in my charge deserve having what they need when they need it, you know?
Right. And it's crazy you mentioned that, bro, because you're talking you're speaking from the aspect of these being soldiers,
Hmm.
right? Majority of the people I lead now have never been soldiers.
Hmm.
You know, you're talking about from a soldier aspect. So imagine talking to a young teenager who's never been under any real leadership, you know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Minus mom and dad, or just mom or whoever,
Hmm. Hmm.
or coaches or people from the community. There's no real set standard, you know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? So we're used to a set standard. And I'm bringing that to a community that's used to a different standard, you know? And
Or
when
lack
I first,
thereof.
or lack thereof,
Hmm.
and you have to try to find that middle ground. Like, oh yeah, hey, these people aren't soldiers. They're not used to, hey, when I say move, that means execute.
Hmm.
They're not used to that. I grew up in a household where my dad was a little bit more stricter. So
Hmm.
I understood it. It's not new to me.
Hmm.
But imagine we're talking social media as your leader now. Like these
Mm.
kids
Mhm,
are led by social media
mhm,
influencers, and they don't understand, the type of things that me and you have been through, or they don't understand what life looks like outside of their little bubble.
mhm,
So
mhm,
imagine bringing that to them. You have to somewhat work with them and meet them where they're at,
mhm,
and then slowly, implement these things. And it might take maybe, bro, I've been coaching basketball now here in the Orlando area for 3 years,
mhm.
going into my fourth year. And I can truly say it's just now starting to hit.
Wow.
Just now. And before, you're like, kids were like, oh man, I don't know if I like Coach Harp, or, da 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 da. It's not because you're just not used to seeing a set standard.
Mhm,
You're used to being catered to,
mhm.
not me bringing you to where I'm at. You know what I'm saying? To
Oh.
make you a better person, player, individual. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? You're used to people just using you for what you have to offer, not actually make you a better person.
Damn. Damn, there's so much there. There's so much there. And we're gonna put a pin. I don't know if you remember this, man, but I'm gonna bring it back one time. But you said you're used to people using you, right? I want to.
Yeah.
We're gonna touch that, but we're gonna put a pin in it real quick, right?
Okay. Okay.
Um, but you mentioned that you've been teaching or coaching ball now for about 4 years. But I want to take it back, right? Let's go back and let's, kind of leading into your second song, March Madness. Of course, there's a connection with basketball, March Madness, Final Four, all
Oh,
that good
wonderful.
stuff. But
Right.
talk to me about the role of basketball in your life, prior to now, through your childhood, and how it connects you to your community today.
Man, so I was a three sport athlete.
Mhm.
Uh Sometimes maybe four, depending on the stage of life. So I ran track, uh basketball, football, and baseball. And as I got older, certain sports required more time. You need someone to take you up to the field, or you're relying on a parent to drop you off. Basketball was that one sport that I didn't need that. You got
Mm,
the basketball court right up the right around the corner from the house. You just walk
mhm,
up there, play ball by yourself, or a lot of the OGs. They had a big part in that. Shout
mhm,
out to them. All the guys from Clearmont and Winter Garden, Florida, that helped me, that groomed me into being a ball player.
mhm,
And at that time, man, you're a young athlete coming through high school. I played all 4 years of high school, East Ridge High School particular. I was a pretty good ball player, but I played a role. I wasn't a
mhm,
standout athlete. I just played a major role. Um, my dad imparted a lot of leadership on me. I was the captain. So we used that to his advantage, hence how I ended up into the military. I
mhm,
had leadership skills. He was like, oh, maybe you should go to the military. And throughout my military career, after basic training, when you get the AIT, you get a little freedom. You know what I'm
mhm.
saying? Man, every day we went and played ball. And I
Wow.
used to tear guys up at Fort Gordon. And I'm
In
talking about
hey,
just straight eat them up.
hey, in the PT shoes though.
Right in the PC. and and
Oh.
you don't realize how much stronger you've gotten after basic training, you know, and then even after not playing for a coach,
Mhm,
you're free now. You know what I'm
mhm,
saying? You're not anyone under anyone's thumb.
mhm,
That goes back to leadership. Certain leaders hold you down. They don't necessarily build you up.
mm,
And that's one of the things that I dealt with as a player once I got older. I'm like, okay, that wasn't what he needed me for. He used this other guy for that, you know?
mhm,
And and that's how everywhere I went, Fort Gordon, Fort Hood, at DC, Fort Belvoir,
mhm,
even Fort Jackson, everywhere I went, I played ball, bro.
mhm.
Basketball played a major part of life for me, and that's that 1 to 2 hours, of just being free.
Yeah.
You're no longer, it's like a mental health type thing.
Mm,
No worries. You're kind of just relaxed, and you're just enjoying life. Growing up playing sports, that's all we did outside of going to school. So
mhm,
that's, different, no different than us being in, going to work. Once you get off work, that mental health part of your day
mhm,
is playing some type of sport,
mm,
and basketball is my thing. I was, like I said, I was a captain. I was a point guard growing up, so I understand the game. I'm not 6'6", I'm not 6'7", so
mhm,
that results in a lot of not moving on to college, or not
mhm,
moving on to play at higher levels. But
mhm,
that doesn't mean you're not good.
mhm,
That just means you had to kind of alter. Hence, how I came back here, man, and I've had 2 winning seasons as a coach
mhm,
here in the community. Moving on to my third year as a head coach, and currently right now, just mentoring these guys outside of just basketball,
mhm,
because a lot of people put so much pressure on these young kids to make it.
mhm,
It just that's what they do. We're in the era of social media. They're seeing all these highlights online, and to add to it, man, 2 of my players, I put them in college, and they ended up not getting through just due to everything being so high. And I'm not talking about the school part. It's
mhm,
just the food.
mm,
Being able to have your bills.
mhm,
And they came back, and this is where I appreciate being someone that's diverse. They came back. They're like, "Hey, coach, we're dealing with this. I won enlisted last week, man. He leads.
Hey,
Yeah, bro. Shout out to him, Braden Simmons. Congratulations, bro.
congratulations, yeah.
Um, he leaves in October, man. He enlisted in the military, in the army a couple weeks ago, and I got another guy that's preparing to take the ASVAB in a couple weeks. So
Right on.
so coaching is actually helping outside of just, basketball itself. It's bringing these guys a different perspective, to grow their lives in more than one way.
100%, man. And coaches are so important. You touched on it before, just like with, whether it's whatever the structure is in the home and whatever these the youth are used to, um, having another figure outside of the home who cares and is invested is,
Absolutely,
man,
bro.
it's invaluable. Like you can't put a price on that. But I do want to know. Thanks for sharing. Like basketball has been a part, like a through line, right? Like that's the through line from beginning to to current when it comes to you and who you are. And I'd really like to hear more about March
Can I
Madness.
add? Can I add to that though?
Of course, no, 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 man, it's over. You ended the sentence. It's over. Now go ahead. What you got?
So any, we're used to being, this is for my military people, and
Hmm.
even not, right. You're used to teaching, coaching, and mentoring.
Hmm.
That part filled that void
Mm.
of not being able to do it on a day to day.
Hmm.
Because it when we're active duty, bro. You're used to teaching, coaching, mentoring daily. You know what I'm saying? When you leave, that's not necessarily a thing depending on your job field.
Hmm.
Coaching is what filled that void. You know what I'm saying? Like that plays that part.
Hmm.
And one thing I realized is, yes, soldiers need you. They need you. Young
Hmm.
soldiers, privates, all the way up to NCOs, right?
Hmm.
But the ones that really need you are the ones that never had any structure,
Hmm.
the ones that never had the opportunity to meet someone that went off to do more, or to do something different. Those are the ones that really need you. You
Hmm.
know what I'm saying? The people that are in the community that just sitting there waiting on something to happen, they're the ones that need your leadership and guidance. And I
Hmm.
think, coming back home and coaching, and then even ministry, helps other people get a different side and different aspect on life.
Man, there's layers to it, man, and I think that you're touching them, man, and like this conversation could legitimately just go on, especially on just those aspects. And so I appreciate the depth you're bringing, because I think you're absolutely right. I for me, you one thing I'm going to challenge you on, right? And it's not even a challenge. This is what it is. You said or what I heard you say was, we're used to teaching, coaching, and mentoring, right?
Right,
Especially active duty folks. And that is not true. Not everybody does this. Not everybody gets their cup
I,
filled from that. You know
right,
what I mean? So like I know people who are like, oh, I've done it enough, or they've met their maximum and they're like, I'm ready to get off that ride. And good for you, whatever. Like I'm happy for you, but I think it's overestimated, right? Because that I like that. I know that you like that, right? And most of the
right,
people that are in our circles are very much so like I'm teach, coaching, and mentoring. For me, it's jujitsu, right? I That's my mental maintenance, and part of that mental maintenance is the being able to like break down a move and learn a move and help somebody else understand it in a different way, right? Because I'm no expert or nothing, you know what I mean? But I may be able to articulate in a different way simply because I am so used to taking an idea that is presented one way and then putting it another way, right?
right,
And I'll think of like uh the bend and reach, right? At one point you bend over at the waist, right? You hip hinge.
right,
And in the book it used to say like you keep your back straight as if you're executing a deadlift, right?
right.
And that's cool. Not everybody deadlifts, right? And this goes back to like I'm gonna this is not mine, right? But I will shout out drill sergeant, or excuse me, Cade LaCroix, right? He would say during the pitches, right, we would put our own little spin on things. He would say, and you probably heard me say it, all right, on count three, execute a flat back, not a cat back.
Yes, I remember that. I remember that, bro.
Hey, that is not a Adami original. But I know when I was I a flat back, not a oh, that's a ball. You know what I mean? Like and like being able to take stuff like that, like those kind of things help people learn, right? And so like, oh, if I got it, I'm passing it to you, right? And the same thing goes for like creativity. I've mentioned it a few times on these podcasts, in these conversations, that like part of the reason that I do this is because like I have a desire to create, right? Like that's been something whether I was writing or whatever, recording, it didn't matter. Like I always had a desire to create and share and whatnot. And this is the newest evolution. And it seems like something that I can keep up for a while, no matter how old I get. It doesn't necessarily get corny, but like a 50-year-old rapper who hasn't already made it,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Right.
But going to March Madness itself specifically, how does the song in itself connect to your life, and when do you go to it?
To get hype,
Hmm.
to get in a zone. Um, when in my younger years playing ball, when the song came out, military wise, and when you're still in that zone of wanting to prove yourself, wanting to prove to yourself that you still had it.
Hmm.
Even these rec league games, you take them serious. You know what I'm saying? Like anything even when I was at the academy doing module pitches,
Hmm.
you listen to that song to get me in the zone.
Hmm.
Like that's my get in the zone song. All right, I'm about to go on. It's kind of like you're about to put on a performance,
Hmm.
and this is my moment to like this is the song I used to get there.
Hmm.
And that was the song I played before every module pitch, every basketball game, at any performance, whatever it might be. Even a PT test, I would play it to get myself in the zone to be at peak performance.
Hmm.
Like that, everyone has that thing, and that song was that thing to get me in the zone to perform at a high level.
All right, now I think where we're gonna pull the pin out, right, is you said what I heard you say was it's a performance, right? Because it is. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, right? Whether you're going out there to shoot hoop, you go out there to lead soldiers, whatever the case may be, it's a performance. And for folks who look at it differently, Roger that, cool, right? But that's exactly how I look at it, right? Like I'm going out there to give you the best, right? Like
Absolutely.
you may not have paid for this, or you may
Right.
have, right? But like I'm gonna get, you know what I mean? But I'm gonna give you something worth paying for, right? Um,
Absolutely, bro.
and that's for me, right? It's for you, but it is for me, right?
Right.
Because I'm the one you're gonna remember messing it up, right? You may not
Right.
remember if it goes the way it's supposed to, right? But you're gonna remember if I mess it up, right?
Right.
So if I mess it up, two things happen. Not only do you not get the standard that you need to know, or that you need to see, or that makes you feel like you walked away getting everything you needed, right? But you also associate me with that lower quality, right?
Absolutely.
And so like it's on me to perform,
Right.
but that's for me. Now, going back to the pin that I said that we put in was a lot of people are used to being used for what they can do. And I'm going to say for their ability to perform.
Right.
How do those two things, those two concepts relate to you, right? Like the fact that you are a performer and that there are so many people who are leveraged for how they perform and you being a performer. Like, how do you reconcile that?
Man, God, bro, like that's so deep because that's a deep conversation
Hmm.
that people don't understand, right? People will use you until they no longer need you.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? No matter what aspect of life we're talking, whether it be military, whether it be civilian, whether it be sports, whether it be whatever, people need you to perform. That's
Mhm.
what it is.
Mhm.
And they're going to choose the best at that craft.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? They're going to attach themselves to the best at that craft. Okay, my knee blew out, right? Sports players, they lose their ankles, blow out or whatever.
Mhm.
Right now they're going through this era of people tearing their Achilles.
Their Achilles, yep.
Guess what? It's next man up.
Mhm.
That's what it is. And that's how I try to ensure that as a coach, as a mentor, you teach the people that you're working with that they're valuable outside of just performing. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
that's just how you have to do it. Because I know for sure for myself, you know what I'm saying? It's like, let's just when my knee blew out, and I had knee surgery, everyone was like, "Hey, are you going to be able to lead us, or do we need to get somebody else?"
Mm.
It's like, dang, you know what I'm saying? Like the doctor
Yeah.
said X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Like just give me a minute to get myself back.
Yeah,
Mental,
how about are you okay? You know what I mean? Like,
right,
it's
right. Like mentally, I can lead you. Physically, I can't. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Well, based on timeline, we need you ready by this time. That's when, bro. I'm telling all of those things played a part in how I think today.
Mhm.
And that should go for anybody. When you realize, okay, what life really is about, everything isn't gonna always be perfect.
Mhm.
And in life, for some people, is based on you performing for them or you executing for them. That's when you kind of have to like pivot a little bit.
Mhm.
What am I doing for myself?
Man.
You know what I'm saying? And
Mm.
what am I doing for me? What's going to benefit me? Because when I'm no longer performing, when
Mhm.
my era is over, what am I going to do? Because
Man.
everyone has an era. Everyone has that era of performing. At some point you won't be the youngest in the room.
Mhm.
At some point you might not be the oldest, whatever that might be. You might not be the best.
Mhm.
Someone else is going to come in and move into your space.
Mhm.
What do you do when it's no longer you doing the performing and you
Mhm.
have to execute from a different aspect?
Mm.
Whether that be, military, civilian, it doesn't matter. This applies to life. What
Mhm.
are you gonna do when you have to change your style of living or
Mhm.
leadership?
Man.
And that's how it ties in.
Man. Man, man, man. Okay. So, I'm right on line with you on that, man. Like, and I think you said something that was really dope that I'm gonna try to extrapolate here. Um, you said you gotta teach people how to be like basically adaptable. I don't want to mess up your word. So
No,
adaptable
no, go ahead, go
once
ahead.
things change, right? And understand their value. You know, um, understand their value outside of what they're currently doing is I think what you said.
Right,
And what I would try to refine that from in my own perspective by saying, um, helping folks connect with their value, right? Like
oh
helping
man,
people.
that's big.
Hey, like
That's big, bro.
and this is the thing, right? Like I think about, like, again, we talked about that balance, right? Like when I first came back to the reserve after being at the academy, being on AGR and all this kind of stuff, and having this like kind of diplomatic feel, but also knowing that like I've created movement and impact in places, like knowing that like this is something that I should be able to do. I could lead,
Right,
8 people and be fine. Um,
right,
and within shoot, man, 18 months, every one of the qualified drill sergeants I had in the unit, except for one, was like, yeah, the conversation was more so, you're not going to be successful here with the way I'm moving things and the direction this unit is going. So let me help you find somewhere else you're going to be successful. Right.
right,
Um, and so what that ended up feeling like was like, damn, bro, like I lost all of my qualified, people. Right. Like I'm feeling like I'm failing. Right.
right,
And in a way, that's my performance. Um, and the other side of that was all of the folks who stayed, including the one drill sergeant. I had real conversations with everybody all the time, but like I came to them, I say, hey, look, this is the role I need you to play, right? This is the role the unit needs. And if it's too much for you, let me know now before we go any further, right?
Right.
But this is what we're building. I want this is where you're gonna help the unit be successful if you choose to stay. He was like, "Yo, I'm here, right?" Drill Sergeant Bartanian, right? Eric Bartanian. Um, really proud of him. Another story, right? But he decided to stay, and all of these different soldiers who stayed in the unit started connecting with their value, right? And they started connecting through their value through the leadership that was being expressed and supported. And
Right.
those soldiers grew, right? And I know I talk a lot about soldiers, whatnot. It's just because like I think that's where a lot of the base is gonna understand this, right? Um, but I'll take it a step back and say personally, right? I have to recognize that I am a performer. At some point, I had to come to terms with I am a performer. And
Right.
as those roles switch, if I don't perform well while also securing what I need to for me, I do walk away here with less than what I came. And
Absolutely.
the moment that became the realest to me was my first day, like the day I reported to recruiting. Right? I try not to, but I'm gonna go ahead and talk about it. Um, when I reported to recruiting, I was like a day early, and I just wanted to say what's up to the unit. And when I walked in, something completely just not kosher took place. And I looked around like I'm being punked right now. They're messing with me. They know I came from the academy. They're just testing the water. They try to see what I'm about. You know what I mean? They just trying to see what it do, right? I was like, you know what? It's cool. I'll walk away from it. And I went home and I didn't sleep that night. I just couldn't. I was like, that was it was a visceral feeling, like something was wrong, so wrong, and I couldn't let it go on. And
Bro,
so
bro, do
I
you mind elaborating?
oh
Is
man.
there any addition you can add to that, or like,
Yeah,
does it have to be like just that? You know what I'm saying? That
yeah.
little.
I got you. I got you. Um all right. So the day I got there, mind you, I showed up to recruiting a year and a half into my AGR contract, which means I had another year and a half for my initial AGR contract before it was up. So I just got done at the academy where um I chose to leave the academy at the time I did because I felt like I was I was getting too much influence and too much trust, and absolute power corrupts absolutely type deal. And I wasn't going to have absolute power, right? But like I had way too much influence for what a sergeant first class should have when it comes to you know the initial training in the army, like whatever. And it wasn't that I felt like I could be like I was going to be irresponsible with it. What it was more so was years ago, one of the songs that really like, when you talk about like, some of my top threes, right? Because I would have to have different ones, but one would be Power, right? By Kanye West.
Okay.
Um, Kanye said, do you have enough power to let power go?
Hmm.
That's the
Oh,
ultimate measure, brother.
yeah.
That's the
That's a
ultimate
bar.
measure. That's a bar, right?
Yeah.
That's the ultimate measure of somebody with powers being able to say, I need to walk away from this, right? And so there was a conversation with with the new commandant, and he like, we were just kind of talking about one day, and he was like, hey, what color's your belt? And I was like, it's green, Sergeant Major. And he goes, you never wore a black belt? And I'm like, no, it's that's the chief instructor line. I'm not a chief instructor, chief of training. My role is green level online with the seniors, whatever. And he was like, huh, okay. And I was like, oh no. Like it was right
Yeah.
then and there, right? Because at that point there had been so much change. There had been so many like emotions around what was going on. Like there wasn't a lot of understanding of why we were doing X, Y, and Z. People didn't, there wasn't enough understanding for people to do anything other than execute, even though I tried to like get it out there. So, anyways, I had all of this influence that I walked away from intentionally.
Right.
And I went to MLC before going to recruiting, and then I went to the recruiter school, and or maybe vice versa, whatever it was. Yeah, I went to MLC first, and then recruiter school. And when I got to recruiter school, I was already like, yeah, this is a weird place for me. I don't like it, but I'm gonna do my best because this is just the school, right?
Right.
And then I get to my unit and I'm like, I'm gonna crush it, right? Like I've just come off of where I was at. Like I told you, I was in a place where like the people who knew, right? And I get to recruiting, I show up just to say hi, and literally I hear a phone call in the back from another E7, right? Now, mind you, at this time there was still promotable. I was the E7 promotable. And I come into recruiting and I hear um tell those C words up a battalion, they can S my D. And like everybody's just like, like, typing away. And I'm looking around like nobody heard that. All right, again, they're testing me, right? And so I go home that night and I'm like, I just gotta let it slide, I don't want to go in there being that guy, all right? I'm always that
Right.
guy, right? I'm not gonna go crazy,
Right.
I'm not gonna lose it, right? So I was like, but I went home that night and I couldn't sleep and I was like, yo, this isn't right. So I went back in after my permissive TDY was done, and I pulled that sergeant, to the side. I'm like, hey man, pleasure to meet you. We only kind of had a quick introduction, but you're a sergeant first class. I'm a sergeant first class. When I came in the other day, I noticed you said XYZ, and he goes, oh yeah, my bad if that offended you. And I'm like, oh, it's not about being offended, right? It's the fact that we're both sergeants first class, and you've got a bunch of junior non-commissioned officers out there who are looking to you for guidance, and that's not something that we should be doing, right? Because the Army expects us to execute better. And he goes, yeah, 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 and he pats me on the back and he goes, yeah, if you ever, if you're offended, just let me know. And I was like, oh, you didn't just little bro me, did you? You just little bro
Right.
me. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I was like, all right, I said what I needed to say. I've upheld my end for now. I'm not going to make this any bigger. But then I go home and I basically kind of like now I have 2 months of the recruiter school where I kind of got not nearly the same, but a similar kind of feel. Like basically what I see is the Army's way isn't gonna be appreciated. It's not the same culture, right?
Right.
Um,
Now, total culture change
it was
from where you
completely
came from.
different. And so when I went home and I was like, all right, I got to figure out something else. So I started a master's program. I'm a high school dropout, fam. Right? Like I just want to be clear about that. I'm a high school dropout. And I started my bachelor's at the Drill Sergeant Academy, or I started my bachelor's after active duty, finished it at the Drill Sergeant Academy, and I wasn't going to go to any further school because I didn't like school. Right? I don't
Right.
necessarily like school. Um, and then I started my master's while I was a recruiter, simply because I said the what I've seen here, no matter how well I perform, this isn't going to be the one for me, and I
Nah, it
have to
don't matter.
figure out a different way to get
Yep.
something while I'm here. And so I started my master's. I think at the same time I formed an LLC. I started doing like ultra, not ultras, like 10Ks and half marathon. I just started doing
Yeah.
all these different things that like I have to do something because like
Right.
where
To
I was
fill the
at,
void.
I had to do something, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so, long story short, no, I keep long stories long. I ended up saying, once my year and a half was up, I was like, you know what, this isn't going to work. I got to transition back. I was actually ready to get out of the Army.
Bro,
Um,
it's crazy. I didn't know you went and did recruiting. You know what I'm
mhm,
saying? Like I didn't like that because a year and a half army time is short. You know what I'm
very.
saying? So that's like super short. So I missed that aspect
Mhm.
like of your career.
I
Kudos
didn't.
on starting the masters, by the way. Like
Oh,
that's what's
hey, that joint is done, baby. That thing was done 2023.
Hey, congratulations, my boy.
Thank you, thank you. But just going back to the point, like you have to find a way to get yours, and that's when I realized it. Right, like previous to it, I was doing it for the love of the game. But when I got to recruiting, I was like, oh no, I got to start focusing on me because this might be the thing that my career ends at, right? Like that was very real, not only from a personal standpoint, but from like the organization may make the call to like the way it was working. So I was like, I got to get mine as best I can before this joint is done. So I
Right.
transitioned, and it all worked out. It all works out the way it's supposed to. I ended up where I'm at now, and I I yearn for nothing. But like that's like you were saying, we have to be mindful that we're performers and understand our value outside of what we're doing because any day that joint can change.
No, absolutely, bro.
Yeah, man.
Absolutely.
But want to make sure we hit this right because your third song is well, damn. Let me see. Your third, the third song, right? And there's no problem with custom man, so if you gotta let it go, right? But your third song is my generation, our generation's anthem, the house parties, right? It's "Yeah"
Yes.
by Usher,
Yeah. Bro,
and talk to me about it.
that's it.
Yeah.
The anthem, dog. That's what is nothing else to say. The anthem to a house party, anything in the thousands, dog.
Hmm.
That's all my mind can go back to is that song.
Man,
Like that was the anthem for our era, bro. Like you just that's just it.
that is,
Dancing, females, you name it, that song relates back to it, bro.
yeah, man.
Like that's just
It
what it is.
it
It's the
it's fun.
anthem.
It's funny, right? Because like I'll still hear it in the club. Like I remember, there was man. Let me see when I you know. So I don't know what year that song came out. Maybe like mid 2000s, right? Um, it comes out, and then like I joined the army. And maybe around the same time they all I don't know it all happened, but for years, man, like it still be played in the club, and it still turned the. I bet you if we went to the club today and that song
It'll
came
still
on,
hit. It's
hey,
gonna hit,
you know what I
bro.
mean? Hey, peace up. Hey, time down.
Peace up. Hey, time down. Like,
um, that's so funny, man. Because but you know what? I did take some time to like really listen to it. Because while I do have those fond memories around like going to the house parties, tearing it up, all that kind of stuff. What do they have? We had the hip hop nights in Iraq, all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
Um, hey, I got it all the war bros, telling us we had soft deployments. Cool, man. I had we had a club in Iraq, bro. I had midnight chow,
Hey,
like I didn't pick my deployment. I just went on it.
yeah.
Um, but it really like some of the key themes are, really confidence, and like being a whole vibe. And even today, it still rocks and that timelessness. And I wonder what are your thoughts on that? Just the level of confidence that it has and being a vibe and the fact that it's still relevant today.
So man, that song came out in my middle school years.
Hmm.
Middle school years going into, high school. And that song gave me the confidence, to get out there on that dance floor and
Mm,
just hit it. You know what I'm saying? And one thing I was always pretty good at was dancing.
hmm.
I wasn't the most popular dude uh during that era, but what made me popular was sports
Hmm.
and the ability to dance. You know what I'm saying? So
I do.
that kind of helped boost my confidence. A song like that,
Mhm,
anyone can relate to it, essentially. You know what I'm saying? You can kind of just let loose and let go. You know what I
mhm,
mean? And that's what that song was all about, bro. So, that's how it kind of relates to who I am now, man. And I still bump that song till this day. It's timeless. It's kind of like one of those Michael Jackson jams, right?
mhm, mhm,
It's just timeless no matter what era. I'm pretty sure I can play that for my daughter right now and
mhm.
she'll just hit it. You know what I'm saying? So, it's just one of them songs that it's gonna transcend eras, bro.
It's okay, all right. So we'll talk about it. All right. You said you asked, and it's kind of like a sympathetic response when you say like right? I say all the time, but you asked like you weren't the most popular guy, but what made you popular was sports and the ability to dance, and you're like yes, I do. Yes, I do. And now what's so ironic about it, right, is like I can't wait till my wife sees this because she's gonna like cackle, a cackle that shouldn't be cackled. Um is in middle school, I was voted the best dancer. Um,
Really?
I I met my wife, and I hope anybody watch. I hope y'all get this far so you can see this. So I met my wife in the club, and I was dancing, right? It was actually, it's so funny because like those stories, like, look, so we used to tear it up in Honolulu, right? My dudes would come through. We invented the dab. I don't care what nobody says. We were out there putting the cape on them. That's what we called it. We called it putting the cape on. Right? So shout out to the fam. But anyways, so we were out there and they were like, "Oh man, I had just like bought this car in Hawaii. I got hit with the brother tax, so I was paying way too much for the car. It was a Honda Civic 4-door, a family car, and I didn't have a family. I was single in the barracks, right? But
Right.
anyways, my guys were like, "Oh man, let's go out tonight." And I was like, "Bro, I'm not trying to go out." They're like, "Oh, come on, let's." I'm like, "Look, man, I'll go out, but I'm not really trying to drink. I just want to go out there, have some fun. I just want to go dance, right?" They're like, "Cool, whatever." So we hop into my car, right? Go down to Honolulu, Waikiki, Zanzibar, RIP Zanzibar, right? And so we get in there, and I'm like, I'm cutting the rug. I'm just literally feeling myself. And my wife, my future wife, right? She walks by, and I'm like, oh snap, right? My buddy's like, yo, and I'm like, I'm good. And so he's like, yo, if you don't go talk to her, I'm gonna go talk to her. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, dog. Like, I don't care. He comes back to me and he's like, "Hey, she said if you're gonna holler at her, go holler at her." Hey, so
Oh
shout out to
dang.
Jose. Hey, shout out to
Dang.
Jose Algren though, because he was gassing me. He didn't say that, right? So shout out to Jose Algren for that. But so I'm like, all right, man. At this point, she's now looking at the dance floor. We make eye contact, and I'm like, I gotta go over there, right? Mama didn't raise no punk, right?
Right,
So I
right.
so I go over there. It's the club, bro, and I had nothing to say. I wasn't in this kind of mind space. So again, best dancer, right? I walk up, I look at her, take a deep breath, and I go, "Hey."
So that was your move, dog?
15 years. All right. 15 years, dog. You only got to get it right once. You know what I mean?
That was a hey,
The
it works.
finger guns.
It
Hey,
works, bro.
the finger guns came out, god dang, it was, and that was a wrap, bro. It was a wrap from there, man. So but it's funny you bring it up because like dancing was always something that was really like, it just eventually, I grew up on Michael Jackson too. I had the little VHS, I would copy the moves, all that kind of stuff. And as the dances progressed, right, we didn't have TikTok, so like, you had to go to a party to see somebody from somewhere else doing a dance, and you're like,
Yep.
oh, I'm taking that joint. Boom, you go to another party in another neighborhood. Now they're like, oh, you out there hitting,
Yeah.
and it's like that's huge,
Right.
right? And so long story short, now, bro, I have no rhythm. I can't dance. I don't two
What?
step. It's gone. I don't know what.
Oh man.
You only need to get it right once.
My man got it right for his future wife, and that was it,
That was
huh?
it,
Okay.
dog. Look, I turned in that part of the brain cells, man. Like she'll look at me and be like, "What happened?" Hold up.
That's crazy,
Eh,
bro.
Hey, but that's what it is, man. So like, I totally appreciate, yeah, because it's right in there when you talk about timeless classics. It's right in there with Juvenile, man. Back that ass up.
Nah, for real. Nah, bro, that song is right there, bro. Like it's timeless. It's just that thousands era hit,
Mhm.
kind of like those Lil Jon songs, man. And
Oh man.
it's right in there, bro.
hmm Usher, Lil Jon, Luda, and Lil Wayne, like T Pain.
Yep,
That was a
that
whole
was the
like,
era, bro.
that was the era, man. And it's to get a little nostalgic, man. I think it really reminds me of a simpler time that
Nah, for real.
unfortunately, I feel like my kids don't get an opportunity to get to, right?
Nah, I agree with that.
And so I definitely appreciate you bringing this up because like I think about it, and it reminds me of that, the hot summers where it smelled like summer outside. You know what I mean?
Nah,
And
for real, bro.
all these different things that you just you can't get these days. And so I wonder what the youth of tomorrow, what their yeah will be, man. Do you have an idea on that? You hang out with the youth, do you have any idea what their yeah is?
Honestly, man, I don't. I don't, bro. I think everything's a new trend.
Mhm.
I haven't heard them play a specific song, because they live based off of TikTok trends.
Mm,
So it's whatever is the next best thing that's out at that moment. You know what I'm
mhm,
saying? So I really don't know what specifically will be their song of tomorrow, or that are transcend generations, man. I'm still trying to figure that out myself.
hmm. It's interesting because we've touched on it a few times as far as, like, the social media influence on youth and, how things are moving. Um, do you think there's like, a lack of value that do you think your value that you bring to the youth is, um, kind of, like, cultured now to kinda, like, quickly consume and discard?
You broke up a little bit. Can you repeat that for me? I'm sorry.
No, that's great. I was saying, like, do you think because of, like, the way the culture is right now with social media, that your value that you bring to these youth and to the people that you lead is lost because the way social media has trained us to consume and
Oh,
discard?
oh my God. Yes, absolutely. E- Everything done now, everything, it's done to be trendy.
Mhm,
Nothing is authentic at all. Even in I coach basketball,
mhm,
their playing style is very highlight based.
mm,
It's not real. So everything they do, they want it to be immaculate.
mm,
Nobody's living for just the moment. You're worried about if you're going to be trending tomorrow on social media, or, TikTok, Instagram, whatever.
mhm,
That's what everyone is doing everything for. So it's created this environment that's kind of like not real.
mm.
So when you mentioned being a high school dropout, and you did amazing for yourself after the fact.
Thank you.
These kids only want to do certain things for the accolades on the back end.
Mhm,
You know what I'm saying? So you get lost. So it's you move on to, oh, that's what's trending now. Okay, I'm gonna go do that.
mhm,
You don't develop any type of foundation,
mhm,
because you're only doing things because it's trending, not because it's authentic to who you are. I don't think anyone's saying, "Hey, who are you? What do you want to do?"
mm,
Not what you think, is trending. Who are you at the core? What do you like?
mhm,
What do you value? Nobody's doing that anymore. Where, when we were growing up, you go to a local park, even the local street corner, you know, there's an old head that's going to talk to you in some way, shape, or form to kind of know, like, where you stand in life,
mhm,
whether it be for the streets, or whether it be for the community, whether it be for the church, or whatever, whatever you had going on, there was somebody there to kind of check you.
mhm.
Now that's not happening.
How do you combat that as a coach? Like, or do you even challenge that in your roles now?
Consistency.
Mhm,
That's the
mm,
only
mm,
consistency. That's the only way to combat it. I went, bro. I'm gonna be like, this is when I knew, just recently, and I'll just touch base on it a little bit.
mhm,
This season, over this summer season, we didn't do summer games. We only did one day of summer games, for 3 games for that one day, and that was it.
mhm,
I knew there was a culture change when guys still kept showing up for practice, workouts,
mm.
just for bonding sessions, even though they know we're not playing next week.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? That's when I realized, okay, what we're doing is starting to sink in now.
Mhm.
Guys are seeing the culture. And, maybe it took 2 to 3 years, but the consistency of understanding, well, what I was doing over here isn't necessarily getting me anywhere.
Mhm.
It's getting me a few likes on social media, and then after those likes disappear, that's it.
Mhm.
Now, okay, let me put in some real work and get stronger. Become a better person on the inside, gain some values. Different things like that. The consistency is what played a part. I
Mm.
didn't change anything. It's just being consistent with it. Now
Man.
guys are starting to kind of, people are starting to catch on.
Man, look, I appreciate that answer. Consistency is something that I know I struggle with, that I really like, emphasizing within my own family, and within myself. And it's tough, right? It's tough to be consistent when you're not consistent, right? Um, and the
So, bro,
and
so I didn't know that, bro. So you don't see yourself as a consistent individual?
we talked about it earlier. Like my schedule, all excuses aside, no, right? I have a general feel for things, and I kind of live off feeling, and
Okay,
um does that normally look the same or similar? Absolutely. uh but the challenge with that is if something changes enough in a day, it might take me a week or two, whatever, an undisclosed amount of time to get back, because I don't inherently do the same things every day, right?
okay,
Or at the same times. And part of that may be just you know, or being a reserve, and like, coming back from 2 weeks of training, and then like not putting my stuff away, and then, whatever the case
right,
may be,
right, right. Yeah,
but
yeah.
then I have to go back and then try to be consistent with my children. But my children aren't consistent because they know that, like, there's not going to be consistency on this side. So it's like, I know that anything my kids do, or at least I treat anything that my kids do damn near as like a reflection of something that I could or could not have influenced, right? And most
Right.
times, right, like if it's something like process wise, I could have influenced that, right? If they don't clean their room, it's not because they're lazy, it's because they're not consistently being required to have their room clean,
Right.
right? And if they're not being consistently required to have their room clean, even though I consistently like a clean room, where am I at?
Right.
Am I at
I
work?
know,
Am I
yeah.
on the couch? Am I doing work in the house? Right, and that's another reason why we talk about. Oh, by the way, congratulations, MQ. Most qualified master sergeant in the 25 series.
I
Um,
appreciate you, my boy. Same for you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Um, but like when we talk about the DL, right? Doing the distance learning course. A part of the reason why I really don't want to be a part of the DL, if I had a choice, right? If I get the opportunity, is because I know how hard it was for me to be somewhat consistent and build a battle rhythm while also having to do online schoolwork, right?
Okay.
Like, while also maybe working from home and this and my kids see me, they think I'm here, right? But
Right.
if I'm working, which I have my workstation, or if I'm doing, the course, whatever, they're here. They want me, and I have to tell them no, right?
Right.
And that is tough on them,
Nah,
right?
it
And
is.
so
Nah,
then
it is.
we start talking about all the things that plays into a consistency. I won't be able to do jujitsu, which is like the only consistent thing I do outside of the things I have to do, right?
Right.
And so like those things are hard, and so like, am I consistent? I'm enough, right? But I wouldn't say like that's my, that, like, when you look at the if you were to come up with a list of ways to describe me, that wouldn't be the top. You know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't be the top, um but consistent enough, right? But that to me isn't good enough in most cases. And so I appreciate, as a parent, as a man, um you being consistent in the lives of others, and of course, your family and your own, right? Because it starts with your cup of water first before you can start filling up others. And I appreciate the fact that you're consistently able to do that. And I'm sure the parents of those kids, those young men, do as well. So, I want to just say thank you for on behalf of that, but also thank you as a guest of Rhymes That Resonate podcast, man. I appreciate this conversation. I appreciate your time. Probably gonna break this up into two parts because, like, man, we really got after it, and we could have
No, we
gotten
did,
more. Hey,
brother.
and I appreciate you, taking the time to do that. But before we leave, man, any closing thoughts, and if you want people to be able to get in touch with you, where can they find you on social?
Hey, man. So I appreciate you bringing me on, man, to your show. Amazing podcast, man. Y'all check my boy out, Chris.
Thank you.
Appreciate you for being the individual that you are, to see me as that leader and mentor to come on and just impart my point of view of things to everyone out here in the world, man. But you can find me at TJ Harp 44 on Instagram and TJ Harp on Facebook. If you're looking to get in touch with me, man, feel free to reach out. And I'm always open to conversing and being part of future ventures.
Wonderful, man. Well, thank you again. Uh, I just I can't say enough about this conversation. I really hope that it gets the level of attention that I think it deserves. And so for those who tune in, please like, share, and subscribe. Right, I'm just making stuff up out here. And you can find us on IG, TikTok, and YouTube at Rhymes That Resonate _PC. Thank you for checking us out. Peace. I get no